Now, another story we've been tracking for you on the AM report, private preschools and nurseries have been given the green light to start receiving preschoolers after the High Court in Pretoria ruled in favour of solidarity. Now, this comes at a time when COVID-19 cases are expected to rise exponentially. It's also right in the middle of winter, and days are getting colder, and it is the season, the flu season as well. Now, the little ones will go back to school to a new reality, no hugging friends, no hugging teachers, wearing masks at all times, and regular washing of hands. So how can you get your toddler ready for this new reality, and what precautions can you take to protect them during the flu season? Let's unpack it all now by a good friend of the AM report, Dr. Dave Kaplan, who is a medical doctor and joins us now live. And I think, Doc, you know, as parents sending our children back to school, there's a lot of stress that comes for us as the adults in this situation, and it's difficult to not transfer that stress to the little ones. We want to ensure that they know what they need to do when we are not there to take care of them. That stress surely is a big factor for them as they go back to class.
Absolutely, Michelle. What we've seen at high school level is the youngsters who are back at school are taking strain already at high school, and they understand what's going on, and you can explain to them what's going on. But when you come down to toddlers, right, you can imagine how much the unknown for them is far, far worse, because there is so much that they don't understand. And now they're coming into an environment, and we've got to now tell them, you're going to sit in these squares, you're going to stand on these dots during play, you're going to be in this hula hoop, and it's quite difficult for us to try to explain to these youngsters exactly what we want of them. I think the best way to go about it is, number one, explain that they are going to be well at long term, because as we've said before, very young children do not get COVID that will end their lives. It's very important. But more important still is we've got to make a bit of a game of it. In other words, if they are playing, the children at nursery school level will become very resourceful and very creative how they play around these new things. We can make it like a game for them. And it doesn't really matter what we teach them at this point. I think the most important thing is we allay their fears. We make sure that they are not stressed, because if you find that your child is bedwetting or he's getting headaches or stomach pains and stuff like that, it's probably from stress, from the worry of going to school, the worry of people they know might have the virus, the worry if they will bring the virus back to their house. And we must explain to them the whole time, that the worries are normal. They're reacting normally to an abnormal situation, because this is not normal, how we are now. The children are reacting normally, and not to be afraid to talk to their parents or teachers, to express themselves about how they're feeling.
So, Doc, I mean, we know how important school is for little ones, for toddlers, in their emotional development, in their school, the kinds of things that they learn while playing at schools. This kind of new reality that you're talking about, not only just in terms of how they learn, but how they play especially, it's going to result in a COVID generation. How is this going to affect the way they interact socially with others?
That is a good question, but children are very resilient. Children, will always rise because they are young. They do not, even though they are aware of what's going on, they will adapt to what is going on in a better way. So I don't like to think of this is going to be the COVID generation. I wouldn't want to think about that we're going to stain these kids as the class of 2020 and stuff like that, because I think that after this has gone by, it'll probably come down that this was the most horrible flu that we ever had, and that all countries and governments around the world tried their best to try and limit what was happening. And they will adjust. And just like the Spanish flu 100 years ago, kind of most of us in our entire lives didn't even really remember it or know anything about it. Eventually, that's what will happen with COVID-20. So I think the children will adapt, but they will get on with it. And hopefully, if we can support them along the way, they will get stronger as they go through their grades.
Doc, before we let you go, some advice for parents and caregivers on what they can do. Of course, the big worry is that children could bring COVID-19 back to the home, where in many cases there are elderly grandparents taking care of them. But what are some of the steps that we can take as caregivers when we send our children to school? For example, the flu vaccine, that is some protection at least as they go back to class?
Yeah, the flu vaccine is always a good thing to have, but the flu vaccine is quite expensive. And I think the flu vaccine would be for children who are sickly. I don't routinely advise it for, but any vaccine is always good, but I don't routinely advise it for little children because little children hate injections. And, that's quite a hard one. And anyway, the immunity because they're so close to birth is pretty good because a lot of them were breastfed and, their arteries are not damaged, from cigarette smoking and life and et cetera. They're closer to being born. I think what's important is not to underestimate how strong these little people are in our lives, right? These are going to be the critical thinkers of our future, right? They are going to be the healthcare workers of the future, the doctors, the nurses, etc. And I think when they come home and they tell the family, don't do this, wash like that, don't sneeze, cover your sneeze with your elbow or a tissue, we mustn't take that for lightly. We must say, yes, you're right, because they will tell us and continually tell us what we need to do. I tell you, they can become the police of the family, and that will be very, very good for everybody concerned.
No, absolutely. I have experience of that as well in my home. I'm continually being told, have you washed your hands, Mom? So thanks very much for that. Dr. Dave Kaplan, just giving us some advice there. As we now know, preschoolers are also allowed to go back to the class. Just another sort of bit of advice from other parents who have weighed in on the issue around cloth masks. One idea from a parent is to get the children to decorate their own masks, and they have some sense of ownership over it. They're more likely to keep it on throughout the day. We'd also love to hear from you, of course, as well, some of your tips and tricks as the kids go back to class.